get into it. I think this is about 10 pages. I'm gonna start off with this. Looks like it's Greek. Yeah. All right. So this is gonna be about a map, a Greek map. Remove myself. The world according to Hecataeus, dated between 550 and 480 BC. Okay. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay, get this going. So, world according to Hecataeus, Hecataeus of Miletus. It says this monograph discusses the conceptual reconstructions of Hecataeus' map of the Oikumene, the inhabited world, based upon his contemporaries. Hecataeus' map was originally engraved on a copper plate and consisted of building upon the concepts of Anaximander of Miletus, circa 611 to 546 BC was his lifetime. So it consisted of building upon the concepts of Anaximander. So I remember that a while ago I did a live on Anaximander and his maps. So I remember it vaguely. Whom later Greeks considered as the first map maker. Miletus, as a Greek city in Asia Minor. Let's see where Miletus is. Miletus. What is Miletus today? Miletus today is in the present day Turkey. So here's a map. Hold on 1 second. Ooh, hold on. We're getting these old Greek maps of Greece. And hold on. Where's Miletus? Okay. It used to be called Lydia, but this is Turkey, modern day Turkey, Thracia, Greece. A panoramic view of the theater of Miletus. So it's a Greek city, Greek culture. So we're seeing the remnants of this culture. Frontal view of the did Didymaeon, did however you say that. It sounds like Diddy. Istanbul. This is in Istanbul. The plan of Millet in the classical period. Egyptian artifact found in Miletus. You got Egyptian artifacts found there. Hold on, let me share this out. And eventually, I got to go back to doing those Native American studies as well. That was very interesting. Byzantine Palatian castle, an Ottoman mosque from the Turkish period at the Miletus site. Turkey is really right in the. We're gonna have to do a history of Turkey because they're right in between the Western world and the Eastern world, and it's always been a land fought over, land under, like we know, one point the Greeks controlled parts of it. We also know the Ottomans controlled parts of it, and so forth. Abbasid, you could go to the Abbasid Caliphate period, and so forth. But it's always seemed like between the Western world and the Eastern world, at different time periods, it's been going back and forth between influence, whether it's Rome and then you know the Arabs later, or the Greeks, and then further down in history, the Ottomans. So Turkey's history uh, goes back and forth. Okay, Miletus, as a Greek city in Asia Minor, was well placed to absorb aspects of Babylonian science, including possibly the gnomon, the upright member of a sundial. So Anaximander is said himself to have invented it. Let me change this title of the live stream and call it Ancient Greece. History of Ancient Greece. I don't even know. Yeah, yeah, that works. Okay. He is also said to have set up a sundial in or near Sparta. Anaximander's master Thales was said to have visited Egypt to consult priests and to have predicted an eclipse of the sun. Okay, so one thing we do know is that the Egyptians had a vast, profound, detailed, and creative understanding of the cosmos that was far superior than anyone else during their time. They understood the cosmos like none other. So now it looks like we're going to go into cosmogony. Anaximander was the second philosopher of the Ionian school, which was particularly interested in cosmology. Okay, so here we go, cosmogony versus cosmogony versus cosmology. Cosmology is the study of the universe's structure, origin, evolution, and ultimate fate, while cosmogony focuses specifically on the origin of the universe. Essentially, cosmology encompasses a broader scope, including the study of the universe's large scale properties and evolution, whereas cosmogony is a subset dealing with its beginning. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Anaximander was the second philosopher of the Ionian school, which was particularly interested in cosmology. The shape and size of his map are difficult to envisage from the accounts. Whether Anaximander taught that the Earth was spherical or cylindrical has also been a point of contention among classical and modern authors. The direct evidence on his cosmology is contradictory. According to Diogenes Laertius in the 3rd century AD, the 3rd century AD compiler from whom we derive much of our bibliographical information about ancient Greek philosophers, Anaximander was the first to draw an outline, perimetron, perimetron of land and sea, and also to have constructed a globe. Similarly, Agatha, Agathamiris, author of a 3rd century AD geographical treatise and a source of many otherwise lost works, claims that Anaximander was the first to venture to draw the inhabited world on a map, Pinaki. The two most common Greek words for a map, or gis, is periodos and pinax, can have other meanings, respectively, circuit of the earth and painting. As a result, modern writers have tended to be somewhat cautious in their assessment of Greek cartography. Diogenes Laertius also tells us that Anaximander believed in a geocentric universe with a spherical earth. However, he is suspect, since the spherical concept was not devised early and others attributed to Anaximander the different concept of a cylindrical earth. Nevertheless, he may indeed, as Diogenes Laertius claims, have been the first to construct a sphere, though more likely celestial than terrestrial. Anaximander of Miletus is said to have held that the earth was of cylindrical form like a stone pillar, the inhabited part being apparently the circular upper surface. Wow. Some of his astronomical speculations were equally fanciful and unfounded. The practical map making which developed from Anaximander's map may be illustrated from a well known story in Herodotus. In 499 to 98 BC, Aristagoras, tyrant of Miletus, made a tour of important cities on mainland Greece looking for allies against Darius I, king of Persia. Tyrant of Miletus made a tour. So he's from Turkey, modern day Turkey, which was a Greek city, Miletus, looking for allies against Darius I, king of Persia. Let's look into Darius I. Because I know the Greeks also had control of parts of Persia at certain points. Darius I, Persia. Okay. This is Darius, the king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire, modern Iran. Born 550 BC, died 486 BC. Now I got to see who's the one with the two horns. The Persian king used to wear the two horns. So you got children named Xerxes, Arsamenes, Achaemenes. So these are Greek names. Even Darius sounds like a Greek name. So hold on, Darius the Great, Persian king. What was he known for? One of the greatest rulers of the Achaemenid dynasty, who was noted for his administrative genius and for his great building projects. Why did Darius of Persia invade Greece? At first, the Ionian revolt went well, but Darius soon gathered overwhelming forces and had reimposed Persian authority by 494 BCE. He then determined to invade Old Greece to punish the states that had assisted the Ionian cities and to end a vexatious fun. Okay, I think I was thinking of Cyrus. That's what I was thinking of. Yep, Cyrus. So Cyrus, when is he born? So Cyrus looks like he is the predecessor of Darius. I gotta look into these names real quick. Why these names? Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes. Is Cyrus a Greek name? While the name Cyrus is associated with Greek, its origin is ultimately Persian. The Greek form, Kairos, that kind of sounds like Cairo. So I wonder if Cairo comes from Cyrus and Kairos. I can show y'all what I'm looking at. The name Cyrus is associated with Greek. Its origin is ultimately Persian. The Greek form, Kairos, is a Hellenized version of the Old Persian name Kurus. Kurus. The name Cyrus is also Latinized from the Greek form. Here's a more detailed breakdown. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, what about Darius? So it seems like the Persians had influence on the Greeks. So a lot of things I might be perceiving to be Greek is actually Persian. While Darius is not originally a Greek name, it is derived from the Greek name Darius, which itself is a Hellenized form of the Persian name Dareyavahush. Wow, that's crazy. Dareyavahush. So while the Greek, and see, when I see this, that to me has a East Indian influence. When I see words start to be formulated like this. All right, back to this. The practical map making which developed from Anaximander's map may be illustrated from a well known story in Herodotus. In 499-98 BC, Arastagoras, tyrant of Miletus, made a tour of important cities on mainland Greece looking for allies against Darius I, king of Persia. He took with him on his tour what Herodotus calls a bronze tablet, pinax, with an engraving of a map, periodos, literally going around, of the whole world with all its rivers and seas. Aristogoras used it when he toured the Greek mainland in 499-98 in search of supporters for a revolt against Persian rule. Among his contacts was King Cleomenes of Sparta, and on it he showed him all the areas on the way from Ionia to Susa, capital of Persia. Hold on, I gotta find out the etymology of Cairo because I'm wondering if it comes from Kairos, which comes from Persia, the Persian word for Cyrus. Etymology of Cairo. All right, here's the etymology of Cairo. They're saying it's Arabic. The word Cairo has its etymology in the name Al-Kahira. Al-Kahira, which translates to the victorious or the conqueror. Okay, now, did that word come from Cyrus being a victorious conqueror? So now, whatever his name, his Persian name was, when it goes through the Greek lens and the Arab lens, and it means victorious or conqueror, does that come from originally the Persian word for Cyrus? Because it sounds way too similar. And then you got this leader who was literally a victorious conqueror. So it says this name was given to the city when it was founded by the Fatimid dynasty in 969 CE. The name is also linked to the planet Mars, which was rising over the city at the time of its founding. I would suspect that it's possible that is connected to the Persian ruler. Alexander was a fan of the Persians. Yeah, I'm learning about the Persians now. I got to start to go into the Greek world and also the Persian world because those are two worlds I really haven't uh dived into. But I'm seeing the Persians. It looked like they was I almost want to say ruling the world. Like it seemed like they may have been more powerful than the Greeks. That's what it's starting to seem like. Like they were the world power. But the Greeks have such a reputation not only for, the things that they built, but um, I'm gonna just say it. They had the advantage of being right across the Mediterranean from the previous world power, which were the Egyptians, and having that relation with the Egyptians where they could go there and get all this information and learn about the world from the Egyptians. So then they take that information, grow on the knowledge, and use it in Greece and in Turkey, or modern day Turkey. Aristogoras used it when he toured the Greek mainland in 499-98 in search of supporters for a revolt against Persian rule. Among his contacts was King Cleomenes of Sparta, and on it he showed him all the areas on the way from Ionia to Susa, capital of Persia. The last region of Asia Minor on the proposed march, Cilicia, is described as opposite Cyprus, implying that Cyprus too appeared, and the regions east of Asia Minor are given as Armenia, Matinia, or something like that, Matiena, and Scythia, with the city of Susa Herodotus represents Aristagoras, showing it to the Spartan king Cleomenes with the following explanation. Okay, so basically what's going on, this is at a time of Persian Greek conflict, and it looks like the Greeks are looking for allies against the Persians, and they're using this map to source contacts, maybe, or visit different cities, maybe, or something like this. So this is what this is what the Spartan king Cleomenes. Wait, hold on. It says Herodotus represents Aristagoras, showing it to the Spartan king Cleomenes with the following explanation. So showing the map. So here's what he said: the lands in which the earth's people dwell lie next to each other. As I shall show you, here are the Ionians. And see, when I see Ionians, I know there's a school, Iona. I know that's a city in upstate New York. I'm pretty sure it's upstate New York, Iona. And here the Lydians, and I know Lydia is a name, so now I know it's Greek, who inhabited a good land and have a great store of silver. And next to the Lydians, you see the Phrygians. To the east, men that of all these known to me are the richest in flocks and in earth fruits. Close by them are the Cappadocians, whom we call Syrians. Oh, okay. And their neighbors are the Ciliciansi, whose land reaches to the sea here, where you see the island of Cyprus located. The annual tribute which they pay to the king is 500 talents. Next to the Cilicians, it sounds like Sicily, but it's spelled different. Cilicians, here are the Armenians, another people rich in flocks. And after the Armenians, the Matiini, whose country is here. And you see the Scythians' land adjoining theirs. It is there on this particular river, the Coaspis, that Susa is situated, the residence of the great king, where his treasure stores are. So Susa, I'm pretty sure, is in Persia. So they're talking about Darius, Susa, Persia. So they're really trying to map out the world between Greece and Persia. Susa, also known as Shushan in historical texts, was an ancient city located in present-day southwestern Iran, near the foot of the Zagros Mountains. It's one of the world's oldest known settlements and served as a significant capital during the Elamite and Achaemenid Persian empires. So Susa was a major city in Elam. On this detailed and informative map, Aristogoras was able to show a vast swath of territory spanning from mainland Greece, Ionia, and Persia. Like many other maps, and oh, I can't wait to see this map. Yeah, this is gonna be fire. So this is 6th century BC map that we're about to look at. Uh, like many other maps in antiquity, however, this presumably had no scale. For Cleomenes, 2 days later, asked, how long would such a march take? 3 months? A standard but ambiguous measure of the distance between places far apart, was the reply, whereupon, despite attractive offers of money, he refused. This portable map, commissioned by the ruler of Miletus, Aristogoras, was probably developed from those of Anaximander and his contemporary Hecataeus. The map was engraved on a bronze panax like Anaximander's, but we may presume that it also contained a course of the royal road, which Herodotus describes in some detail immediately after, giving the number of staging posts and the distances. This road had been carefully measured for the great king by road surveyors, and the general proportions of Aristogoras' map, particularly the section relating to Asia, may well have been guided by such survey work on it. So this great king title, I'm I'm picking up that whenever it says great king, I think it's referring to Darius. So he was, let me see, was Darius known as the Great King? Because I seen it said King of Kings. Okay. Well, yeah, obviously Darius the Great. So the Great King, King of the Kings. This is Darius. So whenever we see Great King, capital G, capital K, that's speaking about Darius of Persia. Okay. A plausible theory is that the geographer and mythographer Hecataeus of Miletus, and remember Miletus is in modern day Western Turkey, was the indirect promoter of this map, based on Anaximander and his own travels in Asia and Egypt. So at this time, that part of Turkey is controlled by the Greeks. Herodotus' reference is important in showing that maps could be engraved on portable bronze tablets, that general maps of the inhabited world were frequently made in Ionia. Where's Ionia? Hold on. Ionia, modern day. Okay, Ionia is located in modern day Turkey. So here's a map of it. Oh, this is a better map. I hate Britannica because Britannica be having everything, but the website's all screwed up. So this is Ionia, and I seen Miletus was over here somewhere too in Western Turkey. So Herodotus' reference is important in showing that maps could be engraved on portable bronze tablets, that general maps of the inhabited world were frequently made in Ionia, and that they were more informative than the simple geometric plans, such as the Babylonian clay tablet of the same era. I have found no one who has attempted a reconstruction or interpretation of Aristogoras' lost map. It is not certain that Anaximander wrote a It is not certain that Anaximander wrote a commentary on his map or on the construction of his sphere. However, it is clear that Anaximander was the first recorded of that long line of Greek craftsmen philosophers who tried to express concepts in graphic form. The construction of spheres and the drawing of maps were to become characteristic products of the mechanical mind of the Greeks, and their regular occurrence reveals perhaps a more practical side of them than traditionally has been presented. However, Anaximander's fellow Milesian Hecataeus was the first Greek to produce a systematic written description of the world in his geographic treatise, Periodos or Periegesis, Geese journeying around the world. What does that Jess mean? Let me see, Jess meaning, or Geese meaning. Etymology. Uh, hmm. Depends on the context. Let me just add in Greek etymology. The letters GES can be found in a couple different contexts when looking at Greek etymology. The root G, like GE, means earth, land, or ground. That's what I thought, because when you think of like geography and stuff like that, so it just means earth. Um, Journeying around the earth around 500 BC. The surviving fragments suggest that he had traveled widely in Europe, Asia, and Africa. He may have also have copied or improved upon Anaximander's terrestrial map. At least, Agathemyrus proclaimed a new edition, more accurate, so that it became a source of wonder. Even so, rather than redrawing the map from scratch, Hecataeus perhaps just criticized his predecessor's work in the typical way of Greek thinkers. Modern reconstructions of Hecataeus' map closely resemble Anaximander's map. They show a circular flat earth with ocean. Oh, here we go. We're going to get a depiction. Surrounding the land masses from the Mediterranean Sea in the middle. This oikumene, or inhabited world, is depicted as tripartite. A strip of land lies to the north of the Mediterranean Sea, Iberia, Italy, Greece, and Asia Minor. Another to the south, Egypt, Libya, and a third to the east, Palestine, Assyria, Persia, and Arabia. The lands to the north are the cold countries where dwell the mythical Hyperboreans, literally people of the far north, separated from the rest of the world by the Riparian Mountains, the Gusty Mountains, whose location has always been a matter of debate. The lands to the south are the hot countries inhabited by the Ethiopians, burnt face, because of their proximity to the sun, and the crane fighting pygmies. Another live that I want to do black versus Negro. Um, and I know Negro, it means black in Spanish, but when we talk about being called black versus being called Negro or nigga, it's two different things because there are niggas who don't have black skin. There are Negroes who don't have black skin, I should say. And then there are black skinned people who are not Negro. So I might have to do a live on that, even though that's pretty much explanatory. But when you break something like that down, then it prevents, you know, people from just associating with groups of people they don't descend from, basically. So I could think of it with the black, or what should I call them, the black Indians, the Abos. They say this person was called dark skin or whatever, therefore that's us. And then people make the same argument about the Moors, to say that, oh, black people or Negroes were not Moors, even though that's not true. Um, and then the same thing with the Egyptian argument. It happens in all three. Um, from my understanding with the Moorish thing, again, it's kind of a similar idea to this, where it's talking about a people's skin complexion. Same thing with a lot of the documents that talk about the Native Americans. If it calls them dark, it's mainly talking about the skin complexion. But there's a difference when you call someone like the Negroes. So this is the map, or at least a digitized modern version of the map. And it looks like it's maybe translated into English or close to English, like Persian Gulf, for example. In short, this is a worldview that relies heavily on mathematical and ethnographic symmetry and balance and mixes fact and fiction. Hecataeus' erroneous impression that the Hyrcanian or Caspian Sea flowed into the circumfluent ocean long persisted. So let me see, the Caspian Sea calls it, oh, this right here. Where's India? Oh, wow. They grouped India right in. Well, where's Persia? Hold on. Yeah, their map is all fucked up. So this is 6th century. Over here is good, obviously, but as you start to move east, you could tell they didn't have knowledge of the east. All right. So circumfluent, okay. Long persisted, and he also believed that the Nile arose from the Southern Ocean. Let me see that. Yep. So that is true. I see that. All right. It is no surprise, by contrast, that he was particularly knowledgeable about the Euxine or Black Sea, an area colonized by Miletus, and his writing may have helped Herodotus on areas like Thrace or Thrace. He mentioned various Scythian peoples here, including the Black Cloaks. He described the flora of the Caucasus, including the thick forest cover and the native prickly artichokes, and he was aware of the varying topography, plain and mountain, of the Khwarezmian country and modern Uzbekistan. A great part of Hecataeus' geographic treatise Periodos was taken up with an account of places and districts bordering on the sea, and it must also have borne a considerable resemblance to what was afterwards called a periplus or coasting survey. It has only been preserved in some 300 fragments, and the majority of these are of the briefest description, having been preserved in the epitome of the work of Stephanus of Byzantium, which gives little more than the names of places with the countries to which they belong. However, it does appear that in part of his written work, at least, Hecataeus was far from confining himself to a dry geographical description of the country, but discussed at considerable length upon its natural curiosities and the manners and customs of the local inhabitants. He, however, certainly added a number of more geographical details, such as are not found in Herodotus' histories, as we find the names of not less than 15 cities of Egypt cited from him by Stephanus. When we are told that he enormously improved Aristogoras' map, and again, this probably means that he criticized it in his text rather than redrew the map. The Periegesis, which was divided into two books, Europe and Asia, the latter also including Libya, Africa. Hecataeus had personally traveled in Asia and Egypt. Modern reconstructions reasonably show this map, which is likely to have accompanied his book, as circular, with the ocean surrounding a landmass that ends eastwards at the Indus River in the Caspian Gulf. Hecataeus believed that the upper surface of the world pillar was a curving disk. The Mediterranean, Hecataeus believed that the upper surface of the earth pillar was a curving disk. So they thought, according to what this is saying, they thought the earth was a damn cylindrical form and we lived at the top, the flat top part of it, I guess. Something like that. I need to see, you know what, let me get a 6th century Greek depiction of the entire earth, not just the flat part at the top. Because if they're saying, oh, you know what, let me just put of the cylindrical earth. Cylindrical. Oh, it already put it here. Anaximander. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, like this. I see. Like this. This is, see, I'm going back into the Greek lives. Oh shit, you know what? I'm already at the right place. Hold on. Right here. Like this. So this is a modern interpretation of Anaximander's world concept. So then, yeah, I'm gonna have to go back into the Greek stuff. I shouldn't even put part one. This is like part three. Ancient Greek maps, part three. Let's change that. But it's been a while since I went into this. Okay, Hecataeus believed that the upper surface of the earth was the earth pillar was a curving disk. The Mediterranean Sea was the center of the world island, composed of lands bordering this sea, the whole being surrounded by a circumfluent ocean stream. The circular shape of flat maps in the early period was laughed at by later Greeks. To the north of the Danube, according to Hecataeus, were the Rippean or Gusty Mountains, beyond which were the Hypernodeans, men of the far north. Ancient and modern opinion has differed on the location of the Rippean Mountains. Aeschylus, however you say that name, and Pindar imagined that they were at the source of the Danube. In West Africa, Hecataeus clearly knew some places on the coast of Morocco. His view of the Nile seems to have been that it came somehow from the Southern Ocean. Book 2 of the Periegesis, comprising the coast of Libya, Africa, from the confines of Egypt to the Pillars of Hercules or the Straits of Gibraltar. One finds a mere periplus or coast description noticing many ports and small islands, while the only tribes of the interior he is known to have mentioned are the Mazis and Zigantes. So the Zigantes, that has to be the ah man, what's the name of that Berber tribe. Obviously, the same with the Maxis and Gizantes of Herodotus. Okay, so these are the same people. Both of okay, I'm thinking of the Sanhaja. So I'm thinking the Zagantes is Sanhaja, but that sounds so different. So maybe it's not them. Both of which lived within a short distance of the sea near the Tritonian lake. The most distant places that he enumerates toward the west are the Metagonium, a name which we find in later times applied to a promontory and people not far from the Pillars of Hercules and Thinga, evidently the same place that was subsequently called Tinga or Tingis, modern day Tangier, just without the straits. It is probable also that his river Liza was the same as the Lixus of later geographers on the Atlantic coast of Mauritania, but this is far from certain. All right, so let me find out who are these Maxis and Ziganti people. Who are the people in Greek sources? Okay. The Mazis. In ancient Greek sources, the Mazis refer to a group of people inhabiting North Africa, specifically Berbers. See, I don't like this. That's a boring answer right there. This term is derived from the Berber autoethnonym Imazigin, which means Amazigh. Okay, so I guess that's part of the Amazigh word, I guess. They are described in classical and late antique Greek and Latin sources. These terms could refer to Berbers generally or to certain specific Berber tribes. Yeah, that's a lazy answer. The Zigantes were a people inhabiting the northern slopes of the western Caucasus, okay, in the region known as Zyx. They were known to engage in occupations such as shepherding and piracy, and according to some accounts, they utilized specialized ships for their piratical activities. They are believed to have spoken a Northwest Caucasian language, so they might be like near Armenia and whatnot. So, in summary, the Mazis represent a group of North African Berbers. Okay, I already knew that. So, they don't know exactly who they are. And here's another source on them. The Mazices, Moses the Black. Who's Moses the Black? In the last decade of the 4th century, the Mazices and Asturians. Who's the Asturians? They're also a Berber people who lived along the frontier of the Roman Empire. They appear as raiders and enemies in Roman sources between the 4th and 6th centuries. Began ravaging Cyrenaica. So Cyrenaica is modern day Libya, eastern region of Libya. So it's a Roman city. During the tenure of the Strategos Cerealis, Strategos is a Greek term to mean military general. Okay, it's a Greek city. Cerealis, the name sounds like cereal. The Mazaces besieged Cyrene. Bishop Synesius took part in the defense of the city. The period of unrest in Cyrenaica lasts until about 410. In 407 or 408, the Mazaces raided the monasteries of Cetus. Along their victims were Abba Moses the Black and 7 companions. I'm not familiar with Moses the Black. Moses the Egyptian. Who the hell is this? Also known as Moses the Strong, Moses the Robber, and Moses the Egyptian. He was an ascetic Hiero monk. Let me see. Oh, he's AD. He was an ascetic Hiero monk in Egypt in the 4th century AD and the Desert Father. He is highly venerated in the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Oriental Orthodox Church. According to stories about him, he converted from a life of crime to one of asceticism. That almost sounds like the actual Moses. When you talk about crime, he killed the dude or whatever. According to stories about him, he converted. Okay, he is mentioned in Sozomon's Ecclesiastical History, written about 70 years after Moses' death. He was a slave of a government official in Egypt until he was dismissed for theft and suspected murder. He then roamed the Nile Valley, with an infamous and violent gang of 75 robbers. His name just makes me think of Moses. Moses was a man of huge physical stature. All right, bro. See, this is too similar because this is the same thing they said about Mr. Let My People Go. They say he's a man of a tall stature, strong, killed somebody, um, was Egyptian, was dark skinned. It just sounds too similar. And it makes you wonder, was a certain story backdated and based off of certain people or what? So they're saying he converted to Christianity. This could even be a made up story. I don't know. It could be a made up story based off of biblical Moses. Um, all right. So I read this part. We're on page 5. So here's another map right here. Moses is an Egyptian name. Libya, Thebes, Carthage. What does that say? Tingis, which is Tangier, Tartessus, Euxine, which is the Black Sea. You got the Caspian Sea. You got the Caucasus. You got Turkey or Greeks, if you want to call it Greece at this time. Scythia, and then the Indus. So they didn't know about the Chinaman yet. At this time, they do not know about the Chinaman. When I say Chinaman, I'm talking about all the East Asians over there. Who's this? Okay. Reconstruction of Hecataeus world map. Here we go. We got another map. Mapamundi, which means world map, map of the world. Who's this? In regard to the general notions of geography entertained by Hecataeus, we are unfortunately very much in the dark. It is certainly probable that he was one of those writers whom oh my goodness. It is certainly probable that he was one of those writers whom Herodotus had in view when he censures those who represented the earth as exactly round as if drawn with a pair of compasses and the ocean flowing all around it. This was clearly the popular contemporary Greek worldview concept, derived originally from the Homeric poems, and from all we know of the progress of the Greek mind, there can be no doubt that they would be very slow to emancipate themselves from the influence of an error once established upon such authority. Anaximander of Miletus, the countryman of Hecataeus, as mentioned above, has been credited in Western literature as the first to draw up a map of the world. There can be little doubt that this formed the foundation for Hecataeus' map. But though the latter is said to have introduced material improvements on the work of his predecessor, there can be no doubt that both would be still very rude and imperfect attempts, which might well excite the ridicule of Herodotus. In this case, as in so many others, it is probable that the scientific tendency of the Greek mind came into play, and that they assumed the round form of the earth and the circumfluent ocean as first principles, without any actual knowledge of the facts. We are told also that they placed Greece in the center of the world and Delphi as the central point of Greece. This last notion appears to have obtained a fixed hold on the Greek mind and is frequently alluded to by the poets of the 5th century BC as a received article of popular faith. Just in the same manner, the geographers of the Middle Ages assumed that Jerusalem was the center of the world and arranged other countries accordingly. It was evidently the same symmetrical turn of mind that led Hecataeus to divide the world into two great continents, or primary divisions of equal extent. But this question of the division of the continents is not free from difficulty. Herodotus, in The passage already referred to ridicules those who made Asia of equal size with Europe in terms which seem to exclude all consideration of a third continent, and Hecataeus, by including all Libya as well as Egypt under the head of Asia, appears to have sanctioned this arrangement. Huh, hold on. I got to read that one more time. Herodotus in the passage already referred to ridicules those who made Asia of equal size with Europe in terms which seem to exclude all consideration of a third continent. And Hecataeus, by including all of Libya or Africa, as well as Egypt, under the head of Asia, appears to have sanctioned this arrangement. On the other hand, it is clear that the division into three continents was well established in the time of Herodotus, so that he himself tells us that he continues to use the divisions and the names because they are sanctioned by custom, though he thinks them unreasonable and without good foundation. And in another places he wait, and in another place he censors the Ionians, who divided the world into three portions of Europe, Asia, and Africa, but considered the last two as separated by the Nile. So Asia and Africa he thought was separated by the Nile. Thus, as he points out, leaving the delta unaccounted for. It is difficult to suppose that among these Ionians, Herodotus did not mean to include Hecataeus, the most recent as well as the most eminent of Ionic writers on geography. So I might have to do some research on Ionia. Or that if Hecataeus had departed from the generally received doctrine on so important a subject, this would not have been noticed by Herodotus. It seems therefore probable. Let me do a quick Herodotus and Hecataeus. Let's just see what the AI tells us about these two. They were both significant features in ancient Greek history and geography, though they lived in different eras. Hecataeus of Miletus, who lived in the late 6th and 5th centuries BCE, is considered one of the first Greek writers to attempt a prose history and to create maps of the world. Herodotus of Halicarnassus, writing in the mid 5th century BCE, that's not different eras. What the hell? One just came a little bit before the other. I mean, he's a different generation, but that's not a different era. So Herodotus is renowned as the father of history for his histories, a detailed account of the Persian wars and other cultures. Herodotus both drew from, Herodotus both drew from and critiqued Hecataeus' work, particularly his geographical knowledge and his approach to history. Okay, so Herodotus comes after, and he was critiquing Hecataeus. Where was I? Here. Um, It seems therefore probable that, although Hecataeus undoubtedly divided his work into only two books or parts, the second of which included the description of Libya as well as that of Asia, he nevertheless recognized the established division of the three continents, regarding Asia and Africa together as equal in size to Europe. Either way, they were both wrong. In the present day, we are so accustomed to our modern maps and to the small size of Europe as compared to the other two great continents that we find it difficult to represent to ourselves the opposite view. But Herodotus undoubtedly regarded Europe as greatly exceeding in size both Asia and Africa together, and therefore treats it as a gross blunder on the part of Hecataeus to have considered it as only equal to Asia. One point that doubtless affected the comparison was that Hecataeus regarded the Cimmerian Bosporus and the Tanais, known as the Don River, as the limit between Europe and Asia, a view generally adopted in later times. While Herodotus extended the confines of Europe to the river Phasis, both systems were current in their time, as we learn from the poet Aeschylus, who in one passage adopts one view, in another follows the other. A traveler who had visited Egypt could hardly fail to have formed or adopted some theory concerning the most controverted questions respecting the Nile and its annual inundations, a subject which had already exercised the ingenuity of several of the Ionic philosophers. But on this point, Hecataeus appears to have acquiesced in the view which, if we may trust to Diodorus, was that of the Egyptian priests, that the Nile derived its water from those of the circumfluent stream of ocean, a theory which Herodotus justly sets aside as unworthy of refutation. I got to read that again. Hecataeus appears to have acquiesced in the view which, if we may trust to Diodorus, was that of the Egyptian priests. So they're claiming that this idea that the Nile was sourced from a larger ocean. They're saying this came from the Egyptian priests, but they're saying that Diodorus says that, and then Herodotus cites Diodorus that the Nile waters is derived from a stream of ocean. A similar want of judgment was displayed by him in accepting, as he appears to have done without scruple, the fabulous tales that were current in his day concerning the Pygmies and the Psyopides, both which nations he placed in Ethiopia, in accordance with the opinion prevalent among the travelers of the time. Oh, that's the end of the article. So the map only exists as a reconstruction. Here are the references right here. And this is a departing reconstruction image. So this is how vast they viewed Europe and how small they viewed Asia and Africa. If they called this Asia Minor, it would be correct, and instead called this Eurasia, it would have made more sense. Africa obviously is not drawn to scale at all, it being, I think, what, the largest continent? Maybe Asia is. Let me see. What is the largest continent according to square miles? Let's see the square mileage. It's Asia. The largest continent by square miles is Asia. Covers approximately 17.2 million square miles. So Thought Co right here gives us the 7 continents ranked from largest to smallest. Asia is the biggest continent by both size and population with 4.7 billion people. Antarctica is the 5th largest by size, but has the smallest population with no permanent residents. Africa ranks 2nd in size and population with 1.5 billion people and 11.6 million square miles. So Asia is approximately 17 million square miles. Africa is approximately 12. All right. Where can we go from here? So I just read that article. I got this other article right here, 6 pages. This is going to talk about Anaximander of Miletus, who kept being a reference in the initial, the primary article I was just reading. So maybe I'll read this one too. But I don't know if I need to because I kind of already got an idea. It'll just give me more insight on Anaximander though. So yeah, this is a legit 5.5 pages. All right, I'm taking a break. I'm taking a little 2-3 minute break, and I'll come back and probably read some more. I might go into this Black Knights book because originally that's why I came on here, and I'm gonna connect this Greek information to the Arabic world, and then I got to learn more about the Persian world with Darius and Cyrus. You know what? In the meantime, I'll play a video on I'll play a video on Darius and Cyrus. Which one? Who do I want to learn about? Cyrus or Darius? Cyrus or Darius? Which one? I think I'm gonna go with Darius. So we're gonna start off with a video of Darius. See what we can learn about him. Darius first of Persia or Achaemenia, whatever it's called. Darius I, and the greatest lie in history. Why are they calling it the greatest lie in history? The deceitful impostor king of Persia. Damn. When Persia ruled the world. All right, this gives us both Darius the Great and Cyrus. Hold on, I gotta freeze that. This is the Achaemenid dynasty right here. See these Xerxes names. What Xerxes name origin? It's Persian. I don't know why I'm thinking it's Greek. So a lot of stuff I think is Greek is really Persian.
Since the dawn of human history, the lands of the ancient Near East, what most people today refer to as the Middle East, are where some of mankind's early great achievements took place. This is the area of the world where megafarms, cities, and writing were all first developed. Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Hurrians, Hittites, Elamites, and Assyrians. These are just some of the more common names of the countless peoples, civilizations, kingdoms, and empires that once inhabited this region. Then, as it is now, the ancient Near East was an ethnically, as well as religiously, diverse place. Between the 9th and 7th centuries BC, the dominant power in the Near East was clearly the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the colossal descendant of the Assyrian kingdoms of old. At its height around 650 BC, the realm of the Assyrian king stretched from the Zagros Mountains in western Iran to beyond the Nile in Egypt. Along with the Babylonians, the Assyrians saw themselves as heirs to the great Sumerian and Akkadian kingdoms and empires that had preceded them well over a millennium before. They knew that their lands, those of Sumer, Akkad, and of course Assyria, were already extremely ancient. Around 850 BC, a new people start to show up in the inscriptions, annals, and archives of the Assyrian kings. Though rough, illiterate, and relatively poor, they're mentioned as extremely skilled warriors who often fought on horseback. The Assyrians called them the Mada, but we today know them as the Medes. Occupying the areas in and around the central and northern Zagros Mountains of what's today Iran and Iraq, the Medes were an Iranian people who spoke an Indo-European language that was unlike anything else heard in Mesopotamia at the time. Though relative newcomers to the region, they were clearly an adversary that was worthy of respect. Assyrian kings would constantly brag about how they massacred hundreds of Medes, only to have to return the following year to subdue them again.